celebrity speakers. And so we get to have a whole bunch of guests. So we're really excited to have all of you who have joined us from, I think I have people from California. I have people from Minnesota. I know there's some few of you on from Bainbridge Island. Told me they were coming in from Spokane. So welcome to the Renton Sailing Center. We are a small community sailing center. We're 100% volunteer driven. We offer private and class education series, both small boat sailing and keelboat sailing that is US or affiliated with US Sailing, so it's US Sailing certified. And we are all very passionate about sailing and teaching new people to sail. We have a fleet of RS Vision dinghies that we sail, and we also have 3 keelboats. We have a J80, a Ranger 24, and a Catalina 27. So we can definitely get people out on the water and get you some great experience sailing. So if any of you on the call know anybody that's reasonably local to Renton and they're looking for access to get out on the water and sharpen their skills, send them our way. So what we're going to do here is John Paget is our president. I'm the vice president. I think we have a few other board members floating around. I see Tyler Wilson's online. He's our education officer. We have Lauren Ahrens, who was just waving. He's our maintenance guy. We have some past board members floating around in here as well. So without any further ado, I'm going to briefly hand it over to John. He's just got a couple of announcements that he wants to make. And then we will get going with Amanda's presentation in about 5 minutes. So John, take it away.
All right. Hey, welcome everybody, all of our guests. And since we've got so many guests, I thought it would be great if everybody could just write a note in the chat, like how you're associated with sailing. That would be great for all of us to read. I think we got way too many people for introductions, but to keep our announcements very brief today, I did want to mention that we just published our newsletter. I believe it went out this weekend. So if you didn't receive your newsletter for some reason, or if you're a guest and you want to see what's going on, the newsletter is published at rentonsailing.org. And there's a button there that you can subscribe. If it's not coming into your email for some reason, and you're a guest and you want to keep in the loop on the cool things we're up to, subscribe to the newsletter, and we've got all the details of what's going on in there up to date. I did want to give a shout out to Lauren. We spent a couple hours. He spent a couple of weeks with the coach boat, sort of in spa mode, getting the fiberglass and gel coat it had been scraped off the bottom. So thank you very much for all you've been doing and getting all our outboard motors serviced over the winter. So we're almost there. We're just about ready for the season on maintenance stuff. There's a couple of details on our COVID that are in the newsletter, but the biggest news right now, the CDC just provided some guidance for people that are vaccinated for 14 days from their last vaccination can be in close contact with other people that are 14 days from their last vaccination. So that means that stuff like if everybody would mind muting themselves, that would be great. And Thomas, I'm feedback through you, by the way. All right, cool. So those folks can sail together without a mask and a dinghy, which can be a big game changer for us, especially getting new people out sailing with some of our experience sailing. And just like we've been doing on keel boats with the masks on, we're still doing that. We still have to follow those guidelines there of distancing and wearing masks, especially at the dock. And our dock is going to be our choke point. So I know that we came out with some phase 3 guidance just on Monday. So the board needs to react to that, but it'll probably be basically on our choke point there at the dock there. A couple other things. Tyler, thank you so much for wrangling all our instructors and getting our lessons published. Big shout out to Brian and Mike Jarvis, who will be instructor candidates for small boat level 1 this year. So congratulations, guys, and good luck. The flyer is in the newsletter, and if everybody would do us a favor and get that flyer for our lessons published in as many other places as you can find it, with your Facebook folks, print it out, bring it to your local Starbucks for the bulletin board, those kind of things, your local library. That would really help getting the word out about our lesson offerings this summer. I think they're going to fill up really quick though, however, but let's get the word out there and make sure everybody has an opportunity to learn how to sail this summer. Congratulations to Matt Hannafeld. I didn't notice if he was on the call or not, but he just became an advanced member of Renton Sailing Center. I don't know if Beth mentioned this, but we've got a progression of beginner, intermediate, advanced. In advanced, we give you a code to the dock and you can come out and take out the boats at your leisure, which is a really cool thing that we do that a lot of sailing centers don't. Lastly, don't forget now is the time to renew your membership. If you haven't had a chance to renew your membership, it's time to do that now. That's it on my list of announcements.
All right, thanks, John. Yeah, our sailing year goes from April 1st through March 31st. So we're just getting ready to kick off and get everything going. And I'm sure Lauren's going to be organizing spring cleaning. Well, he'll have lots for all of us to do. So without any further ado, let's see why everybody's here. We have Amanda Swan Neal here, and she joined the crew of Maiden as a rigger for the 1989-90 Whitbread Around the World race. And the crew of Maiden was the first all-female team to run that race. So with great gratitude to Amanda for coming to talk to us.
Go sit on a more comfortable chairs over here.
Take it away, please. Oh, you're on mute, Amanda.
Okay, there we go. Aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you, John. Well, I'm excited I don't know if I'm excited to be presenting this. This is a very new talk. I have never presented this talk. When John sent out a shout out if I would talk to you guys about Maiden, I said I could find off some dusty old photos and perhaps present my logbook to read through. And I found some old photos and I found my logbook, and my journal is very depressing. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I did not have the time of my life like I thought I did. But right, I've designed the show so that you can put your little screen to watch me on the top right hand side. So everything I'm presenting is to the left. So if you want to have me in a box in a corner, then the top or the top right hand side is where you can put me, and you won't miss a lot of the show. I decided to title I've never done a talk about me, so this is very new. My talk, I'm going to call it Blue Horizons, because I think I'm always looking at the blue horizons, and with sailing, there's always something more, or I don't know, there's something nice about the blue. Growing up in New Zealand, when I look across where the sun rises, the next piece of land is basically Cape Horn. And it just, from a little girl, it just seemed to linger very large in my head for some reason. I think just the sailing stories and the tall ships and the history of Cape Horn, and rounding Cape Horn, you get to pierce your air and you can pee to windward. And I think being in New Zealand, for some reason, Cape Horn was like a magnet. And I knew I would sail around it. I didn't have a clue when or how I would get there. I'd only ever met one person who'd sailed around Cape Horn, and she had done it on a delivery boat, but Amy was my idol. She'd rounded Cape Horn. My screensaver's covered my dates. But anyway, on February, this date on Maiden, I guess it was 1989, I rounded Cape Horn, and it was probably the highlight of my life. Here I was at Cape Horn, racing around the world on a race boat, sailing at Cape Horn, and I could have just died and gone to heaven after that. That was like I succeeded in everything I wanted to do at life. And I was only 23, and I was like, well, what's next in life? Very impromptu is on Maiden. Very, you can see Joe in the middle under Cape Horn with our cameras. So our cameras were huge. They were huge. And they had this big fluffy rabbit that was equally as huge. And we were told when they gave us Joe and the camera, or when they gave the camera to Joe, they said, you know, Joe, you can't hear anything, so just act big. So anytime Joe came on deck with the camera, we knew they couldn't hear us and we just acted big, whatever it was. It was just going to be, oh yeah, we just got to look busy and we just had to make it look as if we were doing something. So we've got Michelle on the left with the champagne. Tracy is driving, which is really rare. Like, this is extremely rare to see Tracy go forward of the aft hatch. Angie's trimming. We've got Jenny standing up, having eaten some cake or something, and Joe, you can see on the camera. We've got some gear drying. You're always drying gear. But most of the time in the Southern Ocean to get to Cape Horn, it was rough, really rough, but not necessarily heavy winds. We had spells of heavy winds, light winds, heavy wind, light winds. And so it was really up and down, just trying to keep boat speed, trying to race for Cape Horn. So it was very frustrating once we got there. As we rounded Cape Horn, I asked myself a huge question. Should I highlight and applaud our sailing achievement under the label of women? Because I'd never worn that label in my life. I'd never considered myself a woman. I never wanted to be on an all-girl boat. I just wanted to go sailing. And now we had this huge label. Okay, we're the first all-woman team. And it was a label I didn't know if I wanted to wear. The helicopters had all gone home. They'd come out to see the guys round, but they didn't really seem to notice if the girls were rounding. It was a dilemma at the time. Here's the world, just to put it in perspective. And we're just rounded Cape Horn. For those of you who don't quite know the world, it's on the bottom left-hand side. We still had to go up to Uruguay, which is a stopover, around Brazil, up to Fort Lauderdale, which is the first time the boats had stopped in the US, and then dash across the Atlantic back to the UK, having left the UK probably 5 months earlier. In 2014, the 5th all-woman team rounded Cape Horn, and it was the first time a campaign had been run as a standalone boat. So from Maiden, we were a standalone boat with standalone team. The next girls teams, the other 4 teams that rounded, were all sub-teams under guys teams. So they were the second boat, the not so good boat, basically. But SCA was a standalone team, and hats off to the girls who basically changed the look of ocean racing. The Magenta Project was formed. The Volvo race realized they needed a standalone team, and SCA executed a great campaign that's launched the sailing career of many girls. For the next race, they decided that it's going to be, they changed the rules quite a bit, but they said women could be on board with 2 extra, they had extra crew, and they then said, no, it's mandatory that 2 women are on the boat. So now you have to carry, well, the boys teams that were planning without going without women basically had women on board. And Dikafari was the only woman skipper and did an excellent campaign with clean seas, encouraging youth and sailing. Bianca Cook, who is in the bottom right hand of this, sailed with Dee and is now forming her own campaign. It's co-ed campaign for the ocean race, which was the Volvo, the Whitbread, and a New Zealand boat, and they're on the water now trying and testing. So they're entering for the 2022 race. They've just postponed it a year. And hats off to Bianca, who is not going all women, but mixed crew, and a big definite on that. But recently, Vendée Globe, 7 women rounded Cape Horn and 7 women finished. So hats off to those girls, because previously only 7 women had entered the Vendée Globe. And that was very exciting, dedicated women. Some of these girls I've sailed with, just impressive. But for me, my life's been about sailing, just love sailing. And this is the first day that I arrived on the Maiden campaign, and my route to get here at 23 was fairly long. The boat behind us, the boat that is Maiden, and it was called Prestige. She'd done a campaign out of South Africa, and Tracy had bought the boat. Tracy, the skipper, had bought the boat in South Africa, sight unseen, put it on a ship and shipped it to the UK. And I arrived in England the day the ship pulled in with Prestige on board. At the time, I was living in Sydney, Australia, and I'd gone over to Sydney as a sailmaker from New Zealand. I actually gone over to Perth for the America's Cup as a sailmaker, and then transferred over to Sydney. And while I was in Sydney, I had been sailing with a few girls, and one of the girls had led an 18-foot skiff called Alabache. She was quite high up in the racing scheme, Vanessa Dudley, and had gone to the Paris Boat Show on demonstration with her skiff. At the Paris Boat Show, she met Tracy, and Tracy was putting together her Whitbread campaign. No money, no funding, but had a glossy brochure. And Vanessa had brought that brochure back to Australia. And I had said, oh, okay, I'll write a letter since I'm a sailmaker down under. I'll write a letter and say that I'm interested. Sailmaking was my career. I was the first woman sailmaker to undergo an apprenticeship in New Zealand. And it was pretty tumultuous. 2 years into my campaign, I realized that the government had been funding half my wages. And the day that that scheme ended, I was accused of stealing in the loft and fired. So basically, I was 2 years into an apprenticeship without a job, and pretty tumultuous. I was like, oh my gosh, why? That's being sexist. Tried to go to the trade union, tried to talk to someone about it, and they said, no, the New Zealand government wants female sailmakers. That's just the way things roll. I managed to find another job at Hoods, which I give my hat off to Hoods. Found myself working on the floor with 30 guys, the only girl. And when they transferred me over to the America's Cup, they said my name was Andy, not Mandy. So they thought they were getting a bloke, but they were getting a Sheila, and it was very interesting. Anyway, so with Vanessa, I'd written a letter to Tracy, and this is dated the 3rd of September, 1987. When Tracy replied back and said that they need a doctor, a foredeck boss, a rigger, sailmaker, an engineer, an electrician, a cook, and 2 grinders in the Southern Ocean. So I sort of went through the list and thought, okay, I'm not going to be a doctor very soon. A foredeck boss, I'm not a very bossy person. I'm already a sailmaker. How about I switch to rigging? Because what holds your sails up but your rig? And that's kind of a little progression that could sort of, since life's not going so well as a sailmaker, I'll become a rigger. So I drafted a letter to Tracy in calligraphy, and I didn't have a typewriter. So I'd practiced handwriting when I was growing up as a little girl, and sent off a letter and was waiting for a reply, or any reply. In the meantime, I switched trades to rigging. This is Noakes Rigging Loft, or it's fairly similar to Noakes Rigging Loft. I don't have any old pictures of my old life, but I found a rigging shop, which is fairly similar. So I don't know whose shop this is, but there's pretty much Noakes Rigging look kind of like this, ropes and wires. And so I asked if I could join the blokes from Noakes. So this is what the backs of the shirts said. And they were like, we're the blokes from Noakes. How are we going to deal with you? You're not really a Sheila, and you're not kind of a tart, and you don't we want you to rig with us. Maybe we'll just call you a sort. So on the back of my shirt, they crossed out the blokes and put a sort. So from then on, I didn't even have a name. I was just called a sort, and the phone would ring and they'd say, is that sort around? I needed to come down and do this and this and this. So the blokes from Noakes and me. Now this is kind of like my sailing history. I was sailing with my dad. My dad built our sailing boats, small trailer sailors. And then the center picture was one of the boats that we built, and he'd build 2 at a time and sell one. So then he'd get profit from one. And our size of boats grew and grew. The blue boat on the top row was our 50-foot boat. So my dad's wrote away for cruising plans. This is 1977. Spent 2 years building a fiberglass boat in a yard with steel boats and ferro cement boats. She was launched and we sailed off the South Seas to the islands as cruisers. The boat was too big. We sailed it back to New Zealand, built a smaller boat, and with the profit, we then sailed up to the States, San Francisco in the 80s. And that really honed my love of life on the water. I came back to New Zealand as a teenager and didn't really know how much I knew until I joined the tour ship Spirit of Adventure for a sail training ship. So through my last year in high school, you get the opportunity to sail for 10 days as a voyager on the tour ship, and it forever changed my life. I didn't know there were rules of the road about sailing. I didn't know there were set courses you could take. I'd always just been learning from my dad. I didn't know there was protocol, and I guess I'd sort of just grown up thinking you just jump on a boat and you go sailing. But Spirit realized that there's actual training to sailing, and there's actual rules and qualifications, and you can work your way up through any trade basically in the maritime industry. So fast forward, going on Spirit, I then became a sailmaker and rigger, and found myself with prestige in the UK as a rigger for the boat, with 2 years to go before the start of the round the world race that we planned to enter. I'm standing here with Nancy. She was the second person to join the crew, and I was the third person officially. We had a lot of cleaning to do. And the boat was absolutely disgusting. And once we actually realized what we had, it had been fitted out by Per Fellman, raced around the world in the Whitbread race as Distador. So she had a pedigree, but a pedigree that was now very old. I mean, a full walk-in galley, main salon with a gimbal table, set bunks for all the crew. This was not the state-of-the-art stripped out race boat that we're now racing around the world. We decided to start from scratch. Tracy said, yep, first day on the job, we're going to strip the boat and rebuild her. Well, we started pulling things apart. This is the refrigeration system. I mean, there was a lot going on and rather daunting for us girls. We weren't boat builders. I was a rigger and a sailmaker. I'd never seen refrigeration system before. My partner in crime was equally as keen as I was, and this is Magella Bush from Ireland. So there was an Irish lass and me, and we basically teamed up and ripped the boat apart back down to nothing, to such a state that there was nothing inside. We just had a hull with holes going through to the outside world. Side stories, Magella and I were stripping down the boat. Magella and I said, this is worth something, this scrap metal, we could go sell it. So we asked Tracy, we said, hey, if we loaded the van full of scrap metal and got some money for it, would that be right? And Tracy said, sure. So Magella and I loaded the crew van full of metal, took it over to the scrap metal yard, and we got 100 quid. We were rich. We were getting paid nothing at the time. So we're like, here is 100 quid, like gold. And we didn't know whether to tell Tracy or just invest it in our pockets. We decided to invest it in our pockets, and we went out to dinner and we split it up with the 3 crew. And we didn't tell Tracy. Well, one of the crew told Tracy that we had split the money from the metal and then it wasn't going back into the boat, and Magella was fired from the campaign. I don't know why I wasn't fired, but she decided to chop someone's head off, and it was Magella. And as I found this old photo, I see that Magella has ground her name with the grinder actually into the bulkhead as we were stripping the boat apart. So this is my legacy to Magella, who then went on to become a sailmaker, and someone who I owe a lot of credit to, the fact that my butt still stayed on the boat, but Magella didn't. Throughout the campaign, before we started the race, 20 girls came and went. It was a whim of Tracy's as to who was staying on the boat, if she liked someone at breakfast, if she didn't. And I never knew if I was going to be at breakfast the next morning or if I was going to be out on the street flying back to New Zealand. So for that year we were rebuilding the boat, I did everything I could to make my job as a rigger look secure as possible. Our first press conference happened. So there's myself, Vivian, Magella behind Tracy. Tracy's in white, Jenny and Nancy. And we were so excited to talk to the press. They were coming down, they were going to do an interview. This was sort of our announcement to the world. And out came the article, and basically the headline said, "Don't rock the boat, big race girls warned." And it just was devastating. Her 11 bachelor girls are sailing around the world. Anger, temper, worry. I mean, they said nothing about how hard we were working on the boat, that we were looking for sponsorship. Oh no, outbursts and tantrums could scupper their chances. And we just were like, really? Is that all you can think about? In the meantime, funds slowly came trickling in, and we could rebuild Maiden and keep rebuilding her. Mary Claude came in from France. She was our skipper. She had offshore experience. Jenny Pocock on the right was an engineer from Boeing, not from Boeing, from BMW Rolls-Royce engines, sorry, in the UK. I'm getting my Boeings and airplanes mixed up, but she was from Rolls-Royce in the UK and great engineer. And between the two of them, they figured out how we were going to create this boat that we could sail. In the meantime, I squirreled myself away into a container and worked on the rigging. We wanted a mast that was going to stay up. Mary Claude even instigated how to laminate up bulkheads. So we were building the boat from the get-go with West systems, epoxy, fiberglassing, and slowly deciding where things should go and how we should outfit it, with everyone lending a hand. So you're on the crew, living in the crew house, basically no wages, just dedicating your time to building the boat. We had a name, Maiden Great Britain, and looking for sponsorship. After rebuilding the boat, she was launched. Yes, christened by Tracy. Here's Mary Claude and Joe, who is our cook and a good friend of Tracy's. And we're just celebrating the fact that we can actually have the funds to get the boat in the water. In goes the mast. Pretty proud day. Some help from the guys in the boatyard. We step it in and time to go sailing. Still looking for funds, we decided to christen the boat and got in touch with Buckingham Palace, and Fergie came down. She was kind of the it royal at the time. The royals go in and out, as I'm sure you guys know, but Fergie was just about as the it royal, and she came out sailing. Here we are with myself talking to Sarah about the rigging. It was quite exciting. I mean, being a Kiwi, I'd waved to the Queen once as she drove by, but it was nice to go out sailing. We had a lot of time on the water. This is Nancy and myself being quite a bit of a rebel, sticking out my tongue there. Tracy not looking very amused in the background. We roughed along, Tracy and I. I don't think we ever really bonded. I think from the get-go, it was, I'll do my job, and Tracy, as skipper, I respected her very much as skipper. It was her campaign and her boat, and my duty was definitely to sail as rigger and keep the mast up. We were all put in our little boxes, and it I think that way Tracy could work out who did what on the crew and just keep everyone in line or not. Our qualifying race for the Whitbread was a race across the Atlantic, and we were produced with prize giving outfits one day for another photo shoot. This is our second big photo shoot. Now we're looking at the 80s. We had padded shoulders. I'm even wearing gloves, so I'm the third person on the left there with black gloves on. For some reason, I thought this looked very English, and black stockings, and we did I don't know, it seemed kind of odd, and then raced across the Atlantic. So we'd worked out our boat that if we raced hard and raced fast and got a good result, we might have a chance of getting results in the Whitbread Around the World race. A lot of trial and error. We're learning how to control the boat, put the spinnakers up, reef the boat, and just for that qualifying race, we had no wind because we did the pre-qualifier to get to Lisbon, but the race across the Atlantic let us prove our mettle and let us prove how much we knew. Just a view at the back of the boat. These are some old slides that I've dug out. The rest of the slides I think are just of us goofing around, but it was kind of probably the first time I'd actually been this fast on the boat and was quite excited to sort of get a stern wake. Very old fuzzy photo, but this is the team of 22 boats that did the qualifier for the race, the race across the Atlantic. And we were second. We came second on handicap, and this really upset the big maxi boats that were then enlisted to race in the Volvo and the Whitbread race. So much so that they decided to campaign to England and said, hey, if Maiden comes first, a small 58-foot boat comes first against the millions of dollars we've spent on our big maxis, there's no way that we want to have that have any chance of the girls winning anything or coming second or any high results for the Whitbread Around the World race. So Whitbread race organizers went back to the handicapping rules and totally changed them so that ruled out that any small boats in the smaller divisions were actually in the league for getting placements in the Whitbread race. And to me, that was kind of crushing. I was like, okay, so I'm just going to be now racing around the world with no chance of a trophy or any win, and racing against big money. But I could understand big money versus a campaign of girls that had no or little funding. Oh yeah, we got to wear our dresses for the prize giving. So out it came. We never saw those dresses again. I don't know why I'm so worried about what we're wearing, but for some reason it seemed symbolic at the time. By now, I didn't quite figure out where I was on the boat. I knew I wasn't rubbing along with Tracy very well, and I didn't have a clue where I stood with the rest of the crew. I was the only person from New Zealand, and I'd just been always working with blokes that rigged at Noakes and sail making. I was the only girl with 30 guys on the floor. So to find myself with 12 women or 11 women, it was like, well, where do I fit in? I was walking down the street, and Mary Claude and Jenny spoke French. I didn't speak French, and they called me over. They were in a cafe, this cafe here, speaking French with some sailors, and said, "Hey, Mandy, what are you doing? Come have a drink with us." And I was like, "Oh, okay, Mary Claude, maybe she's all right." I hadn't a clue. I didn't really understand half her accent half the time. But slowly I really warmed to her and came to really admire her skills as a sailor. And she's a pretty awesome person. We then sailed the boat back across the Atlantic through the Caribbean and decided that she wasn't what she wanted. After all that work and having outfitted her, the boat still wasn't quite right. So when we got to the Azores, we sort of had a crew party and decided things that, and sent Tracy, who wasn't on the boat, sent Tracy a letter saying we need to find more money and need to rebuild the boat. Already our crew is starting to form fractions. 6 of these girls did not sail on the Volvo. I think the tantrums and the drama was starting to set in. It was hard without someone who was a focused leader or a team builder. We got back to the UK, rebuilt the boat again. So basically stripped it all down, recompositioned winches, and this is all done with welding and funding that slowly came in, and decided, okay, we're now ready to race around the world. A sponsor stepped in, Royal Jordanian Airlines. So we had a new paint job, boat got launched, and we had basically 3 months to get ready with the new boat before we were to hit the start line for the Around the World race. As a qualifier, we did the Fastnet race and Jo broke her arm. The fact that we didn't have full medical kit on board meant that Tracy was really upset with our doctor. We were supposed to have raced with full kit, and Mary Claude said, no, I want the boat to be light for racing. We're just going down to the end of Ireland and back again. We don't need all our around the world spares on board. And after that incident, Tracy said, right, Mary Claude, since you've gone against my wishes, you're not to be on the boat anymore. For me, that was a huge blow. I was definitely in Mary Claude's camp. She'd been our skipper, she'd been our leader, we'd raced across the Atlantic, and not to have Mary Claude on board for the race I was like, okay, where do we stand now? Where do my loyalties lie? But it was to Tracy and to the boat and to doing the race. When we started, this is the start of the Whitbread race, and I was like, this is going to be a long road, but we've worked hard. We've worked really hard to get here. We've got a boat, we've got a crew with 2 new crew members who have only been on board for a week, and we're going to do the best that we can. Lineup of the girls, we've got Michelle steering, Tracy at the back of the boat, Dawn, and Michaela trimming, standing up on trim there. But we were sailing into the unknown, and we were keen. We were so keen to get going. I have no pictures of that first leg. I lived that first leg in absolute horror because I thought I was pregnant after all that. And how do I tell 12 girls that I'm pregnant? It meant like, and then what do I do? We're arriving in a country where I don't speak Spanish. You can't get like logistics of being pregnant, and arriving in port was beyond my comprehension. I finally got a pregnancy test and found out that I wasn't pregnant. So I'm like, okay, I can at least stay on the boat and refocus and get myself together and carry on. This was my birthday and Nancy's birthday when we arrived, but it was probably my most horrible birthday in my life. Here's a press photo conference of when we finished each leg, the girls, well, the watch leaders, which is Dawn Riley and Michelle on the right and Tracy in the middle, would get whisked away for press conferences. And it's just interesting to see how tired the girls look here. So to put you back to our world picture, we have raced from England down to the port of Uruguay, which is in the Mar del Plata border between Argentina and Uruguay. And our next leg is the red leg, which is 5,000 miles, which is basically 5 weeks in the Southern Ocean, and we dip a lot lower to Australia. We were technically supposed to stop in South Africa, but the boys, because there were boys who raced in the race before us, or the teams that raced in the race before us to South Africa, were so naughty and destroyed the town that South Africa said, no, you are not stopping here. We do not want the Whitbread Around the World race to stop in South Africa. But Australia said, yes, we'll take you, Fremantle, put their hand up and said, by all means stop. And then it was a sprint leg to New Zealand, my hometown. As rigger, my job was to go aloft daily for rig inspection and to inspect the rigging on deck and all the lines and make sure that the lines were all free to run and the halyards were free to run for kite peels, basically running and standing rigging and the mast. Well, I discovered a week into the Southern Ocean that the cap shrouds, so the ends of the spreaders where the shrouds join, were coming unscrewed. So I'm lying horizontal on the picture on the left, underneath the rig with a huge spanner trying to tighten these massive fittings that were coming basically undone as we rattled along in the Southern Ocean, a bruise to show. So I spent the next 5 days up the rigs trying to secure the rig, because if I couldn't secure those fittings for coming undone, we would have to turn around and go back to port. Managed to do it. It's a lot of tears and sweat and rigging and provisioning. We don't have a lot of communication back to head office or back to the rigger, so I pretty much had to work on my own devices to stop the rig from coming unscrewed. And then life carried on. It was a matter of racing, keeping things going. We had a zip toilet door and we were always crashing into it, that the zip finally broke. So from then on, we had no toilet door, which the later boats didn't have a toilet door, but for some reason it seemed okay. We are now 12 girls on a boat without a toilet door. It seemed iconic for some reason the day the toilet door left, and here's Michelle just brushing her teeth. We weren't really told by Tracy where we were as we raced around the world. We had a blow-up globe, the blow-up beach ball in the background, and then once a week Tracy would get a marker pen and draw our track on it. There's no satellite navigation. We had sat nav, and we'd get a feed coming in with our position that was kind of sketchy. Actually 2 machines would come, but because we were so low in this horizon, it was hard to get a fix now and then. So basically we were sailing kind of blind, not really knowing what our position was, because Tracy didn't do celestial navigation. So she would sit at the nav station and wait for those fixes to come through. Pretty calm spinnaker runs. We're now doing spinnaker peels. So we had learned how to do them, but basically the grind racing down in the Southern Ocean is that you're downwind pretty much all the time. And it's just peeling kites one after the other, or putting reefs in one after the other as to your wind strengths and speeds. And here's Jen on the foredeck, was our foredeck person, getting ready to hoist a kite, taking down the kite. Same with the spinnakers. The kites were pretty scary a lot of the time. And for us, we found that it was better probably to just do pole out headsail and just jibe instead of trying to go careering off at an angle with the spinnaker and then jibe that and career off and just sort of kind of erratic steering. Tracy preferred that we did a more steady course downwind. It was easier for her to do the dead reckoning, and a lot of the time was just under the headsail with the headsail pulled out. More foredeck shots. We'd signed a waiver, a photo waiver, so we weren't allowed to take photos, and anything that happened on Maiden basically stayed on Maiden. We signed a confidentiality agreement as well. So a lot of these pictures I've just downloaded from a website Tracy had posted I've never actually seen before. Southern Ocean sailing, just brilliant. Big waves, surfing, awesome, except our boat was really hard to steer. And you can see in this picture that the wheels are brown. And they figured out the fact that we had really heavy old stainless steel wheels, that every time we turned one wheel, we were actually trying to turn the other wheel. And the girls who steered, I wasn't allowed to steer, the girls who steered were getting massive RSI, repetitive strain injury, in their hands. Shot taken from the boom, looking down. So we have grinder, trimmer. So basically 4 people on watch, and then 2 helm that switch out, and then myself up the rig. So 5 on watch at a time. Tracy in the nav station, so she made up the other crew, and Joe was our full-time cook who would come on deck for spinnaker changes now and then. So we sailed with 12 girls. And those 2 green boxes you can see on the left-hand side were the sat nav that the fixes came in on or irregularly, and Tracy would then plot that on the chart. We had some darkness hours. The fact that we're racing in the Southern Ocean in that summertime, there wasn't as much darkness as in the Atlantic or the further latitudes that we cross, but nighttime things get hairy a lot quicker. I did an iconic shot because we had signed away camera rights. I did not have the camera at all, but one of the girls had protested that we didn't get enough little happy snappy shots, so they gave us a happy snappy camera. And I took this shot for the first time that we were actually doing 15 knots. So we registered we were doing 15 knots. We had a big spinnaker up and a crash net, chicken net we call it, between the spinnaker, so the spinnaker doesn't wrap around the forestay, and as we wiped out a lot. When I went aloft, only Michelle would drive so that I wouldn't get tossed around too much. We arrived into Fremantle first in our division. So there were 4 divisions in the race and there were 5 boats in our division. And the fact that we'd beaten the boys and come first into Frio in our class was a huge achievement for us. We were really ecstatic. Champagne all around. It was pretty much a highlight. From Fremantle, they changed out our wheels. So we've now got pink wheels, and these are carbon. So just switching out the wheels meant that when we were turning one wheel, when we were driving, we weren't then having to turn another big heavy wheel on the other side. So from now on, every shot you'll see, we have the iconic pink wheels. They're foam covered instead of leather covered. For our arrival into my home port in New Zealand, it happened in the middle of the night, and I expected to see perhaps my mum and dad on the dock and a few friends, and thousands of people came out to New Zealand. I mean, I made front page news in my home paper. I'm the second person on the left. To come into New Zealand still first in our division was magic. And yeah, mum and dad on the right. And my hat's off to mum and dad. They had been cruising around the world on their own boat. They'd done a 200 race up to Japan, decided to sail around Cape Horn to England, and arrived in England the day that I arrived on to join Maiden. So there's their gaff rigged Herreshoff ketch Taitoa, and my mum and I at a pub. This is the sort of the first week of Maiden. My parents then wanted me to go sailing with them, to sail over to France to join a wooden boat festival. And I'm like, no, I'm on this race campaign. I'm going to race around the world one day. And they said, okay, well, if you do, we'll sail back to New Zealand and meet you there. So that's what they did. When Maiden knew we were going to be on the start line, my parents jumped back on their boat, left Europe, came through Panama Canal and to New Zealand. Tracy won Yachtswoman of the Year. It's the first time the award had been given to a woman. And this is from the UK. And massive ticky tape parade downtown Auckland. And work goes on. So we now had to re-strengthen the rig. They decided that our rig was too light. We were now getting split fractures because I'd tightened the rigging. And rigging was now stressing through the bottom of the boat, and we had to sleeve the mast. So the mast came out and was sleeved to strengthen it. We got a new boom. Drawing all the rigging lines here. So quite a bit of work involved in just keeping the boat going while we're in New Zealand. Because leaving New Zealand and heading for Cape Horn. Here I go, I'm bet around it. And we took off like a fox out of a foxhole. Off we shot, big waves, big seas. It's cold. It's pretty miserable. Yep, this is racing. Pink wheels, trimming, 5 of us on deck, 2 hours on, 4 hours on, 4 hours off, continuous. My watch buddy was Angela, who's also Irish, and she was my watch buddy for the entire race. We've hunkered back here. Normally we should be trimming, but we've hunkered back a little bit here around the helmsperson. When hot drinks came up on deck, we would gather in one place and all take a sip from the same thermos to try and stay warm. Views looking forward. And views of more looking forward, more waves and more wet. And then life continues down below. Jen packing a spinnaker, Jen and Nancy. So with kite peels, we probably ran about 4 or 5 spinnakers and would change them out. Thankfully, none of them really tore. They were all heavily built and we could switch them out, which meant repacking them. They had to be wooled each time we hoisted. So stuffed and wooled and ready to go for a peel inside one another. This is the only shot down below. And we're basically lying on the middle of the floor, looking up at our bunks, our bunk stacks here. And I'll bring my mouse. And this is my bunk here. So everyone else has kind of a plain bunk. If you see here, this is Claire and her bunk's kind of plain. But me, I've stuffed all these animals up here. I've got Mickey Mouse. I've got a little foot rot flat dog, mementos from friends. And when I get really angry, I'd get my little Mickey Mouse and I'd bend him into all sorts of contorted shapes. And I don't know, I was kind of mean to him, but he was he was my hero. So Mickey basically kept me going. I just look at him and his little face would be sitting up above my bunk there. As rigger, I was splicing lines along with going aloft. So I was kept pretty busy just keeping the lines in order. We had wire to rope splices. This probably took about an hour to do, especially when your hands are cold, sitting in the main salon area, just on the floor, jackets off as I'm dry suits on, as I'm working on a brace to keep it going. And then we ran out of wind. Those big seas, those big waves that had shot us out of the rabbit hole stopped. And it was light. It looks kind of rough here, but it's nothing that we hoped. And we just watched our boat being heavy and big slowly slip behind the other boats in our division. You see Dawn's got her wrist strapped here from repetitive strain injury. So she had a splint made and would keep her arms strapped. Jen coated up with sunblock there. She's always worried about her look. She was the baby on the boat and had been a model for a fashion company for a few times in the UK. So Jen was very, I guess, not necessarily a prima donna, but she was always on to us to cover up and sunblock. A drying day, so light airs, Michaela and I. And by now we're kind of getting goofy. I think we've been at sea too long. So Mick and I rummaging around. Mish was from France. She was our best driver. And as we came to Cape Horn, we got hit with a massive rogue wave. Mish was driving at the time, holding on to the steering wheel, and the wave hit her in the chest and it totally cracked the wheel with so much force. 4 of us got swept along the deck to the back of the boat. And when you get a powerful force from the ocean, you're like, whew, it's a big wake-up call. I'm driving, but I'm actually shotgun driving. I wasn't allowed to drive. I'd done a big spinnaker wipeout in the early days. It's a long story, but actually Mish is driving on starboard side and I'm just doing a prima donna photo shoot on port side here. So even though it looks like I'm driving on the broken wheel, I should say that I'm not. These are the 3 girls I never saw. They were my off watch, Nance, Claire, and Sally. So we would always do the changeover switch and those watches stayed. And then these were my 3 girls, or myself with Angie and Michaela. This is probably my favorite photo. On a light day, we're playing, I see our shadows just dancing on the headsail there as we're sailing along. Goofing off. There's a lot of goofing off photos because we were told they couldn't, I mean, we did act serious and we did race hard, but I think just for lightening things, and Mickey at the back hatch. By now we'd really formed as a team. We knew each other inside out. We knew our quirks and who you could talk to, who was your buddy. Yeah, I kind of, once we got to Cape Horn, it was kind of a relief really. When we pulled into Uruguay, it was like, we're there. All we have to do is get this boat home. We hadn't gotten good results on that leg around Cape Horn, and we knew that from then on out it was going to be fairly light, so we'd have to work really hard to get our heavy boat to get up and perform. And it was light. Doldrums coming up through Brazil, rainy day. Still had a smile on my face. We were starting to get kind of lax as crew. We've ditched our uniforms, Dawn and Claire, and decided to wear, well, it wasn't my idea, it's Tracy's. If you can't win, let's wear swimsuits. So coming into Fort Lauderdale, we donned crew swimsuits. I was like, are you kidding? Are you serious? But when you're told to do something, you do it for the sake of the crew. Mish steering as we come into the finish line in Fort Lauderdale. And there's always champagne. Even though we didn't win or get a good result, we had achieved a good finish. The last leg across the Atlantic was incredibly light. There was absolutely no wind, like zero. We sat and could hear the Concorde go across. To keep busy, we created jobs. Here's Tanya sewing sails. Mish doing a fake boom repair. If we had to repair the boom, what would we do? We'd get a piece of metal and we'd grind away. And Tanya, also a dentist. Oh, let's give everyone a good teeth checkup because we're just drifting. There's just no wind for days and days and days. And having been used to the Southern Ocean, we were used to that, but sailing with no wind, at least now the new boats just move in light breeze. But when you don't have the modern weather, we'd had no idea We didn't have weather. We didn't know what was happening. We just sat. Now with weather forecasting, it's quite a different scenario. Just a sunset shot of Jen. But we finished, and a huge welcome in the UK and front page news. I mean, it was a blur. It was a huge blur coming into Southampton as 12 girls to have sailed around the world to a crowd of thousands, and TV interviews and accolades and the movie. I didn't even know there was going to be a movie. Tracy said, "Hey, do you have any old photos?" And I said, "No, we signed away photo rights." So when Maiden came out, I was in the South Pacific, and I'm like, oh, I'm not even in the movie. My name's in the credits. So that's how much Tracy and I rubbed along. So even though I spent 3 years on the campaign, I've seen the movie once. It's interesting. I was actually flown to the UK to see the movie. So Tracy did fly all us girls there for a reunion. I didn't speak to her. I did a photo shoot. I saw Tracy for 2 minutes, and that was it. Put me up in a hotel and did this photo, and I flew back to Hawaii. On stage, this is another photo of the girls as we are now. And Tracy has now taken Maiden and restored her, refitted her, and is now doing the Maiden Factor, which is sailing around the world. Well, the boat's now in the UK, but before COVID came, sailing around the world, raising money for girls in education. What did I do after the race? Well, everything dried up. It's a little different for the girls and the boys. I went back to Noakes Rigging, which is now called Noakes Group. There were no more blokes from Noakes Shirts, and I worked professionally as a rigger for Noakes. I then joined the Next Around the World campaign on the Yamaha second boat, which was the US Women's Challenge. Yes, yacht fraught with, challenged with low budget and high-tech boat. It was a disaster for a number of reasons. Second boat, second campaign, and I'm not going to say any more. I will give a shout out to Sophia for coming forward and having the courage to, and I walked away. I walked away from yachting. The boat continued. The skipper was ousted. Whitbread stepped in. Now it's owned by Heineken, and they took over the girls' boat as a label for women in sailing. I don't know. I was not involved. But Dawn from our race stepped in, and Jenny was also on board. And Mary Claude, who was our skipper on Maiden, was also on board. So 3 key girls from the Maiden campaign were on the Heineken campaign. I went back to rigging. Yes, I went back to New Zealand, home of where I was from, and really enjoyed it. Started racing, match racing with women's teams out of our yacht club, Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron, MRXs, and coaching. And then went back to my true love, Spirit, and worked as an officer on board the ship for youth sail training. I just needed to regroup where I was in life, and I guess define who I was. Then walked a sailor from Seattle, John Neal. He was heading for Antarctica. Wow, you can't stop there in a round the world race, and it seemed very inviting. I joined him aboard Mahina Terry 2, and we got to do expeditions. We conducted expeditions around Cape Horn into Antarctica. There's a book, 50 Places to Sail Before You Die, and I got to put my name on Cape Horn and go ashore. So that was sort of a culmination. There's an amazing monument at Cape Horn that looks out over Drake Passage to all the sailors that have perished rounding the Horn. Cesar and his wife Lorena are lovely lighthouse keepers on a small island in Picton, and we took them on passage to their lighthouse when we were there. And little Carolina is their daughter at the time. This is going back in 1994 when we went to Cape Horn, and we're still in touch. They named their daughter on the right Amanda after sailing on board our boat. Carolina is now on the left. She is now a psychologist. Lewis, their little boy, is in the Armada, Chilean Armada, and his Cesar and his wife. And the girls go on tour ships whenever possible. So with Mahina Expeditions, we sailed to Antarctica on conducting sail training expeditions, which is brilliant. And then to the Arctic on Mahina Terry 3. Spitsbergen, we've conducted expeditions in the South Pacific since 1994. Oh, yes. And I'll go back because as of 2 weeks ago, we have sold Mahina Tiare. She's been in lockdown with COVID in New Zealand. We tried to get her back and decided it wasn't, or we tried all sorts of things, but we have sold her to a Canadian, and she is now based in New Zealand waiting for him to arrive so we can hand her over. In the meantime, we're doing Pacific Northwest cell training expeditions. And last summer we did it on a Juneau, and this summer we're doing it on a Garcia. Our focus also with expeditions is giving back. So we visit schools in the countries that we visit, giving out eyeglasses and making a positive contribution. So here in Panama, we're giving eyeglasses to the women in the San Blas Islands. When I first met John, West Marine said, what can we do to get women into sailing? And the first thing that popped into my brain was make a pink jacket. I don't know why. I guess I'm so tired after wearing blue and red and white. And I said maybe a pink jacket might get women interested in sailing. It took West Marine 11 years to make a pink jacket, 11 years, but I got my pink jacket when we were up in Svalbard. I don't know why I was enamored with pink. But my cookbook, The Essential Galley Companion, also has a pink cover, and that came out in 2000. I've just reissued it, so it's available from our website, mahina.com. And I've been writing for 48 North, so all those recipes and things are in the new edition, second edition of The Essential Galley Companion. I didn't really want the label of just being a cookbook, so I've done a coloring in book for engine systems. So it's the 6 systems that I think you need to know for an engine. And here's the fuel system colored in. And I'm still torn between boat shows and, oh no, women's involvement in sailing. Seattle Boat Show, yay, Women's Day is free. That's brilliant. I love it. And I try and present for Women's Day as much as I can. Go Seattle Boat Show. Whereas Toronto and Vancouver, they think women should pay $99 for a lunch in a fashion show and for Women's Day. So go figure. Well, one boat show gives it away. Another boat show thinks that women should pay for lunch. I mean, I don't mind paying for lunch, but they sort of sell it as a different, anyway, I'm not going to go there. Magenta, color of pink, is the color of a huge project that is really working to get equal quality for women in sailing, and hats off to the Magenta project. Dawn from Maiden runs Oak Cliff Sailing, and huge proponent of gender equality, women equality. And if you're looking to upgrade your sailing skills or advance into sailing, her Oak Cliff Sailing out of New York is doing leaps and bounds and fantastic for sailing. When did women start in the Olympics? Well, in 1900, there were women in the Olympics, but in 1988 was the first exclusive women's sailing event. So women in sailing haven't happened that long. And I know I should do a shout out. Can I keep going? I'm nearly there. I know you guys finished at 8, but if you have to drop out, drop out. You guys can figure it out. I'll keep talking. Is that all right? Anyone?
We're good till 8:30.
Oh, 8:30. Oh, great. I'm trying to talk fast here. Okay, I promise you I'll finish.
I have time for questions. So.
Yeah, I'll finish it in about 10 minutes. I just want to make sure I'm not over the limit. I didn't realize I thought I was going to start at 7. Okay. So this is just a little background history of women in sailing. US sailing are now going, not just women, it's all gender equality, LBG, and great. I mean, I'm not saying not include everyone, but World Sailing Trust has just, did you guys participate in this? The survey that they're doing for, yes. So globally, where do we go for yachting and women? America's Cup held in my hometown. Don't get me started. Women's Day, they highlighted all the women behind the scenes. Are there women they're talking? Even today, a notice came up on my email. Are they going to have a woman on the boat? Was it a token woman, or are they going to compete? SailGP are working hard to get women on the boat and training. Unfortunately, they get them to compete. So it's really hard to get 2 girls who sail together as an Olympic team to then see who's going to be the better of the 2 to sail on the boat. I think that's tough. That's really tough to be the chosen one. But you can make a difference if you want to get into foiling. I know these are expensive boats, but time on the water, just getting out, just learning what you can, sail on as many different boats. Foiling, I've never tried this. I haven't even really been in a dinghy, but willing to give it a go. My first passion is learning with instruction. And so, or just learning with someone else rather than trying to go it alone. So I highly recommend Sound Experience. I think they do, Adventurous does an amazing job and so close to home here. For further study, Seamaster, met a couple of their boats as we sail around the world, and just fantastic program, fairly spendy, but time on the water, studying and with a crew. Women in Maritime, really going hard at it for gender equality. Some friends in this organization who work hard to promote it as well. And yes, as of last year, Minnie gets to wear the pants. So my little Mickey Mouse that sat above my bunk should have probably been a Minnie Mouse. I didn't have any role models like Minnie, because they've now put her in pants and made her captain of the cruise ship. So go Minnie. I think that was fantastic website. I know most of you might subscribe to it. Women Who Sail, very supportive for just connecting sailors and women if you want to go that route. This is going to be our platform for teaching for this summer, Garcia 45 Exploration. So if you see us out on the water, give a toot, give a shout once COVID's gone. I mean, you're welcome to come for breakfast. We'll be doing 10 trips from Bellingham out the Straits of Juan de Fuca into the ocean and back again. And the name of the boat is Obelix. And she's got a new sail cover now, so it's dark gray without the Exploration 45. She was previously called Sea Monkey. If you want more information from us on offshore cruising, on April 13th, 14th, and 17th, we're doing a virtual seminar. It's following our 260-page offshore cruising companion. And details of that seminar are on our website, mahina.com, under seminar. And here's me on the bow of the Garcia, looking forward to, as you say, a COVID-free, mask-free summer. We'll have all that COVID testing on board. But for 9 days of sailing out the Straits should be fantastic. As I soar for blue horizons. Great. Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you, Amanda. That's quite the amazing journey you've taken over the years. I would love to open up the floor to questions. I'm sure there are lots of people with questions. So you can either put questions in the chat, or you can, if you want to unmute yourself to ask a question, please feel free.
John, should I stop share?
Yeah, if you want to.
Does that make any
that
difference?
way we can all see each other. Yeah.
Okay.
If people are on a smaller screen.
Yeah, there we go.
So, hey, I will start it off with just a couple of comments and everything. My first question was, why didn't we see Amanda as much in the movie about Maiden? And you answered that question. So that I know we all had that question. But
hopefully I was politically correct on that.
Yes, and it was obvious in the movie that there was a lot of friction in that crew. So I'm glad you brought that up and everything too. So, but hey, we can certainly help you out with some dinghy sailing. If you're welcome to come out to Renton Sailing Center anytime. I think we just in the newsletter, you'll see some of those really cool RS Vision dinghies with the asymmetric spinnaker, and they're just a hoot. We don't have a foiling boat yet, but maybe someday.
Maybe. All right. Let me know when you do, and I'll upgrade my dinghy skills and give it a whirl.
But I just wanted to mention, and you went over that, Rebecca and I came to you and John's offshore cruising seminar. I just saw that you guys are offering that again. You had a slide about it in April at the Cruisers College up in Anacortes. I think it's going to be all online.
It is all online, yeah.
Yeah, so that is fantastic. Rebecca and I had been from San Diego to the Marquesas on an offshore passage before, but having done that and then going through that seminar, it was awesome. I would love to go sailing with you guys on one of the expeditions. Maybe I'll scrape up my pennies and do that. But for a little bit less, take the seminar. It's fantastic information to know about if you're got any interest in offshore sailing. So Beth, do we have any questions in the chat there?
We have a question in the chat. Someone would like to know, how much risk is there from floating containers when you're out in the blue water?
The risk from floating containers. I have never seen one. One of our expedition crew then skippered a boat and she took a photo of one. There's so much stuff out there. I mean, even you saw the Vendée, they hit something, or whether it's a container, whether it's a buoy, whether it's something big, there's a big risk. Yeah.
So Amanda, I thought it was interesting as you talked through about getting women involved in sailing. And I know there are a lot of women on this call, and there's certainly been lots of chit chat in various women's sailing groups that I've been in. But we've worked here at Renton Sailing to try and get women, more women out on the water and get women sailing groups together. And I know there is an incredible sailing community of women in the Puget Sound, but it does still somewhat feel to be an uphill battle. So I definitely sympathize with anyone who is there. And if anyone has any ideas beyond Amanda's one years ago to West Marine about pink jackets, I'd sure love to hear more women skippering. Do we have any other questions that anybody would like to put forward for Amanda? I'm just checking the chat, so feel free to jump in while I catch up on what's in the chat. We have a comment from Rebecca. She says, it's great to hear your personal journey and to hear more about the history of women in sailing. It's still clear that women have a long way to go in sailing. Many of us have had some frustration over the years with sailing club centers being primarily male-led, instructors not aware of how to work with women, etc. Renton Sailing has really evolved a lot in terms of female leadership and both dinghy and keelboat training for women and girls, but there's a lot more to do. I know Rebecca is one of our female instructors. I am working towards that goal, but I'm not there yet. But I know Margaret Palmert's worked really hard to be mentoring some other women in the Puget Northwest area to get certified as female instructors too. Emily would like to know, who did you follow in the recent Vendée Globe? Any female favorites?
No, I love them all. I mean, I love Pip. I think Pip is just awesome. And no, since I know some of the girls, I mean, Sam, yeah, it's what they have to contemplate to do that race. And it's beyond, for me, I really suffer from sleep deprivation. I found that out on Maiden. So I just need sleep. And for those girls to undertake what they took, no, I love them all. They're amazing.
Next question we have, and I have this question as well, but Sandra would like to know, where can we get the coloring books?
Oh, the coloring books, right. I just mail me a check for $12 and they'll be in the mail to you with your address, and they will be in the mail to you within a few days. So I will be mailing them out. And
I assume we can find that on your website, where to send that.
Yes, yeah. So on our website, we have a book list and yeah, and our address. Yeah.
Next question we have from Thomas, would you do it all over again?
Would I do it all over again? Well, you can't repeat history. It's changed so much. The boats are so different. Would I do it all over again? Yeah, of course I would. It's hard to dig up because I've buried it for so long. And I mean, I did the race and came to America with John in 1994, and no one had ever heard of it. And I mean, no one ever really knew what the Whitbread or so it had been a very English side of my life and a very Kiwi side of my life. And since I'd lived in Australia as well, Australians hadn't really heard of it. So it'd always been something that I had just put in the background. And when the movie came out, it's like, whoa, like, oh, is that what we did? So for me, the fact that I hadn't dwelled on, I mean, I have it on my CV that I did it because it was like, okay, but I had never really would I do it again? Sure. And yeah, you can't say no to something like that.
Next question we have is from CT. Is midlife too late to get into some kind of adventure offshore racing, assuming, say, minimum RYA coastal skipper level, not professionally, but more for the adventure?
No, of course not. It's never too late. I think you're always learning and growing. And even like Margaret Pommet is just amazing. I think she's just so, just gives so much. And it's such leadership skills. I really lack leadership. John, my husband's the skipper. I realized that on Maiden. I was never one to take charge. I've coached a little bit, but I've never, no, I think just take everything that comes in your stride and just give it 100%. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But no, by all means, no, we age too quickly. It's frightening how quickly we age, and don't let life go by.
Emily would like you to talk a little more about sleep deprivation while sailing, and she wants to know, how did you manage that?
Yeah, a lot of sleep deprivation. I'll admit something now, that I suffer from manic depressive illness, and it's probably the first time I've said that. And so for me, sleep deprivation is not good. 4 hours on, 4 hours off worked well. And we were basically never on Maiden, we were never called out of our bunks. And it was a nice comfy bunk. We didn't have to hot bunk. These days it's pretty intense down below on the race boats, the girls I speak to. And I don't really speak to the guys. They can, I'm out of that scene for various reasons. But even now on our boat, because I sail with my husband, he knows when I need sleep, and I'm pretty adamant that if I don't get sleep, then I'm just not, I don't function very well at all. So it's very important. My life is ruled by sleep and exercise, really. I still try, and I think getting out for a run and yoga really help just keep the balance between life.
It really is a life work fun balance thing for all of us, I think. Chuck would like to know, would you say more about how women might take care of themselves on board? How might women's needs be different from guys?
Yeah, and I never thought there would be a difference. And it was, as I'd never really sailed with women on Maiden. I'd done a trip with a girlfriend of a friend of someone, husbands. Well, I mean, it was just I'd blokes, and especially coming from down under where everything was black and white. I mean, you're a shithead, but I'll still go buy you a beer at the end of the day. Or there's a lot more camaraderie. And with women, there was this dance. Oh, you've got such pretty eyes. Or Amanda said something to me last week, and now she's not talking. I mean, it was the layers of just stuff that drove me crazy. As far as taking care of ourselves, I mean, everyone has to eat, sleep, and hygiene, and the basics. And we were young, and you can put up with a lot when you're young. I think when you're older, you're like, okay, there's limits to some things. Or you just not necessarily want comforts, but what you can deal with when you can deal with it. Yeah, I'm going around in circles now. All right, enough of that.
Yes, it's a nice segue into the next question, a little more technical. What's your favorite sail configuration for sailing dead downwind?
Dead downwind. I don't like going dead downwind because it's rolly. Like dead downwind, unless you've got a boat that lifts up its skirts. The Garcia, I'm dying to try downwind. Lift up the center plate, twin rudders. She'll bury her bum in the water and just go. But Mahina Tiare, the Halberg Rassi with that keel, and I mean, she would just, in the tumble hole, she would just roll, and she was dreadful. So working your angles, like getting speed up on a heel so you're steady, especially on the ocean, because if you're dead downwind, that roll is just for sleeping, it's a pain. I can't sleep. So then I get grumpy, and then I'm like my wheels fall off. So working an angle where the boat's on a constant heel and you can sleep without rolling is much better. So no dead downwind.
Can you share an example of the teamwork on Maiden? You've mentioned a lot of the friction, but can you tell us when it really clicked?
When it really clicked, I wish I could tell you when it really clicked. And there was some fun times when it really did click, but there was always a fraction. I think we could put it down to nationalities. The English girls really stuck together like glue. And so there were the English girls and then the foreigners of myself and Dawn and Angie, all us un-English crew. And you had to watch each other's back, whether they were English or not, or on the other watch or not. I mean, you were there. It's a life, and you respect that. And other than that, we would just goof off and just try and be lighthearted. Our time in port was a lot longer than what it is now. We had 5 weeks at sea, 4 weeks in port. And now the crew are doing turnarounds, they're doing sponsors, but the crew are also changing a lot. Whereas my race in the Volvo, it was just one crew for the entire race. And now if you're an Olympic sailor, if you're a foil sailor, if you're a GP sailor, you can only do one leg of the Volvo race, and that's enough for your CV. You're not on board for 9 months around the world, whereas I was on Maiden for 3 years on that campaign. So as for the girls, I think because I come from down under and haven't really been in touch with, I mean, we email or Zoom once, but I'm not part of the clique. They're all in Europe. 2 of the girls did come to New Zealand, but I've been gone from New Zealand. So as far as fun memories, my journal's dreadful. I looked at that and I'm like, I can't really read anything online. It was a vent. Yes.
Wow. At least you had something to vent.
Yes.
We've gotten to the end of the questions in the chat. I want to thank you so much for your openness and sharing the challenges and the joys and your long career of sailing with us all tonight. I think I've met so many amazing, inspiring women, and you are right up there with all of them. And it just motivates me to want to do more and learn more and teach other people and get more people out on water. So lots of hand clapping, and I want to say thank you for joining us. I want to thank all of our guests for joining us as well. I hope you enjoyed our presentation. We don't have celebrity speakers every month, but we do have them several times a year. And as long as we're still all meeting on Zoom, I will definitely be sending things out. I do have all your email addresses, so I'm going to follow up and ask if you would like to stay on the list to be notified of future speakers, or whether you would prefer to just wait until you notice another time when it pops up in your Facebook feed. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. And Amanda, thank you so much for telling us all your stories. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, everyone. And if you see us out on the water, do come over and say hello with COVID distancing and everything, because I really enjoy connecting with sailors. And COVID's just been, I mean, I've missed the boat shows, I've missed seeing everyone, but do come up and say hi. Hopefully Seattle Boat Show will be going. And if the club wants, I can just mail some, like if you just get 6 people together at the club, I can just, for the books and things, I can just do one drop to Renton Sailing Center for you guys, and if it's easier to do it that way. But thanks, everyone.
Great, thank you. I also want to mention, if you are in the Renton area and you're interested in getting a fledgling women's group off the ground, we have our ex-president, our past president is a woman, that's Rebecca Paget. Myself, Judy, and Melissa are also on the board at Renton Sailing. So we're a small group, but we're making our presence known, and I really, really want to get a women's group together. Some of us have been learning to crew the J80 and skipper the J80. So definitely we are working hard to get more women sailing. So if you're at all interested in being involved or joining us to help recruit more women, please reach out to me. You can reach me at info@rentonsailing.org. Also, the last thing I want to mention is we are a not-for-profit. We are 100% volunteer driven. So we don't ask an admittance charge for our celebrity speakers, but if you feel that you have enjoyed the presentation and would like to help support community sailing in your community, I did put a link in the chat where you can make a token donation of whatever your heart desires. And I also see John waving something in the background, so I'm going to stop and let him say what he wants.
Yes. Amanda, thank you so much. It's our tradition to give all of our speakers one of our birdies here. So this will be in the mail to you. So
Oh,
yeah,
well,
thank you
very
so much for being here. And it was great to I was heartened that you remembered me after
Oh
all this
no,
time.
I remember you and Rebecca. I was so keen to have
That's awesome.
friendly sailing faces in the seminar. So no, thank you very much.
Yeah.
No, I enjoyed your presence in the seminar because you're so keen to learn. No,
Yep.
I'll pin your budgie on my office wall, which is the only space I get to keep. So I'll look forward to receiving that. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that concludes our meeting. So thank you everyone for being part of the meeting, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone out on the water here pretty soon.
I'll keep this open if anybody wants to hang around and chit chat, or if you have any questions about this.
You know, I just wanted to say something. I know Amanda didn't have the chat button, and there's a ton of compliments on your talk, Amanda, that are in the chat that I know you haven't seen. And so
Okay.
I just wanted to.
Oh, good. Thanks for
you,
pointing that out.
Yeah,
so
that people.
We'll leave this open.
Really,
you can filter through those. So.
Yeah, I don't know if you can read those.
Or 68 of them. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was. I know it was your first talk on this subject, so I wanted to let you know it was very well received, and you did an awesome job. Thank you so much.
Oh no, thank you.
You as well. We'll send you the comments, Amanda.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. Yep. Thank you.
Or if you want, you can just click the little three little ellipses and you'll have the option to save the chat too.
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, you do know your way around. Okay, I've done that.
Oh, you can
All
save
right.
a chat from a meeting?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
All right, I've just put it on my desktop. Thank you. That is really nice. Wow.
You're still coming in.
Oh, so Mike Jarvis, Beth and I were chatting. So this weekend for the race, looks like I'll skipper the J80. So if you want to line up a crew for the Etchells.
So for those of you wondering what John's talking about, the Newport Shores Yacht Club has an every other Saturday recreational race. It's primarily a group of Etchells, but we take our boats up there and they do the handicapping. And so we go up and race with the fleet up there every other Saturday. So it's a really good way to learn a little bit about racing and hone your skills.
So I think our Etchells Tenacious 2 will be Judy and Ernesto and me. So
cool.
So we're fully crewed for
You're
that.
crewed. I think I'll be
And,
looking for a crew for the Saturday for the J80. So ping me if you're interested.
And of course the big Jeanneau up there, the 42, 44 Mijita, they're always looking for one or two extra people too. So if you've never been on a bigger boat, that's a fun one to go on.
And hey, Haley, thanks. I see you hopped in. I finally see your face. I want to thank you for sending the meeting out to all of your crew over there on Bainbridge Island. And also Haley has
there's Haley.
To invite any RSC women that are interested to their talk tomorrow night. Haley, do you want to give a little plug for what that is about?
Sure. Hi, everybody. We're making
Hey, Haley.
we're making a very late dinner after I coached the high school team and got home at 7. So, but I loved hearing Amanda, you tell your story and give all your insights as rigger on Maiden and all the things you've done. I've been to your diesel engine talks and read your cooking recipes in 48 Degrees North. You're just amazing and definitely one of my heroines. So thank you. Brava. So yes, tomorrow night, Bainbridge Women's Sailing Group is hosting Ace Sprague from Northwest Maritime Center. She's going to do an excellent presentation on tides and current that she has done before multiple times, and she's very good at it. And we'd love to have any of you join us. It starts at 7 tomorrow night. I sent the link to Beth and to Shauna and Elise at the Social Women's Group as well. So yeah, but good to see you all. Happy sailing this spring.
And Ace does a great job with her presentation. So
I'm going to say good night. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you again. Good night.
Yeah, enjoy your summer. See you on the water. Cheers. Good night.
Night.
Cool.